Welcome to Porch Play Chats, sponsored by the American Association for Promoting the Child's Right to Play, or more affectionately called IPA USA. IPA USA is the USA affiliate of the International Play Association. As part of our efforts to promote play, we're happy to introduce our Porch Play Chats. These are conversations that focus on a wide range of topics from experts that are just as passionate about play as we are. You can find the latest Porch Play Chats and learn more about IPA USA by visiting our website at ipausa.org, clicking on that upper right, top right corner, and you can access our Facebook page, our Instagram account, and our YouTube channel where all the Porch Play Chats are released. I'm Deb Lawrence, and I'm the president of IPA USA. And with me joining us soon on the porch is Lisa Murphy. And our special guest today, and we're so glad to have Ross back, is Ross Thompson. Ross is a longtime advocate for play and avid Dungeons and Dragons player. So Ross, let me ask me that question in a minute. And the co-host of the podcast, Teaching with the Body and Mind, a program and educational director who helps create play-based and nature-based early learning centers in the South Metro area of Minnesota. And so Ross's topic today is training wheels don't really teach you how to ride a bike. I like
That's right.
it. I like it. So I
It's
have to tell you,
controversial.
it's controversial, but I like it. And so I have to tell you that Joseph Yore, who was the middle school teacher who uses play in his middle school classrooms, is a Dungeons and Dragons master.
Well, I think it's something that, especially when you get into older, more kind of formal operations thinkers, it's a great way to teach all kinds of curriculum because it's heavy with math, but the idea of pro-social behavior and problem solving, and I mean, it's a great format for teaching all kinds of school content areas and life skills.
I think you two need to meet, so I'm going to try to figure that out.
That'd be great.
So talk to me about why don't training wheels teach me how to ride a bike?
Well, I'm going to answer a question with a question and say, what would your rationale be for putting training wheels on a bicycle?
No, I don't want my child to fall and get hurt.
Right. So we have the idea that this is going to help your child, learn this skill, and it's going to be safe. There's going to be less skin, knees, and elbows. But what are they really learning when they're using training wheels and bikes, specifically that kind of idea? What do you think, Deb, they're actually learning skill?
Well, they're not learning balance, which is what they're going to need when they take off those training wheels, right? I guess they're learning how to pedal, right? So they're learning how to move their feet in a pattern so that they're going around and around and moving forward. It's so funny when I see kids with training wheels, they never use the brakes. They only use their feet, right? So that's how they're learning to stop. They're not really using the mechanics on the bike.
Right.
I don't know. What else are they learning?
Well, I think the one, I mean, I think there's a lot of subtle skills. Like you said, they're learning how to actually pedal the bike, and there's things like, but the first thing you open with is they're not really learning balance. And that's what we think they're actually learning how to do. So we have this illusion that training wheels are going to teach my child how to ride a bike. And this is more rhetorical. But have you ever seen a child who's had their training wheels taken off and the very first time rode without falling or without needing the parent to run behind
No, in fact, my experience in learning to ride a bike is my older brother was on one side and his best friend was on the other. And they said they pushed me off and they ran beside me. And as I started to tip this way, they pushed me up, and I tipped this way. They pushed me up.
Right. So those first few maiden voyages are going to be a lot of tipping and falling. There's actually only one person in recorded history who ever took their training wheels off and got it right. It's I believe it's Charlene Pilkinson from Cleveland, Ohio in 1979. She was the only person ever in recorded history, and that's completely made up, by the way. No one has actually ever been able to successfully ride a bike independently the first time when the trailing wheels are off, because like you said, you have no feeling of what the balance is because you've been able to tip so hard left and right that you don't know where your center of balance is.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, being an avid bike rider myself, it's something that a skill that I learned very early on. But interestingly enough, I think what resonates with this topic is that when I was learning how to ride a bike, I did have training wheels on, and our driveway had such a large bump. To get up, I would get stuck at the bottom of it every time. So I would be at the end of the driveway crying because I was stuck and I couldn't get off my bike because I was worried I was going to tip over. But my parents, one of them would have to come down and like lift me off the curb, and then they would go. And so finally they're like, this is it. We're not doing this anymore. And interestingly enough, a child down the street had a much smaller bicycle frame. And that's what I ended up learning on, was a bike that was much smaller, where my feet could actually touch the ground. And now I'm actually learning where my center of balance is because I can keep it. I was on a bike I was going to grow into this bicycle. So it was too big for me. So I couldn't really, if I was starting to lose my balance, I couldn't put my feet down safely. And so, you know, that idea of really thinking about what are we really teaching children when we're creating these opportunities, these kind of extra safety stopgaps or these precautionary measures, like how much are we actually taking away from children's learning? And that's why the movement with Strider bikes and these pedalless bikes that are very small for, you know, 2-3-year-olds have picked up a lot of momentum, is because these are actually giving children the opportunity to learn what balance actually is.
And so I always have to ask the question, because I know your background and what you're really focused on and what you do in the classroom with kids, is what else are we doing that interferes with that development?
Well, I'm so glad you asked.
and you didn't even give it to me.
Exactly. That's the serendipity of these conversations. It's Minnesota. As people maybe who've seen from the first Porch Play conversation, I'm now bearded because it's wintertime here and you need to stay warm in this climate. But that also means a lot of dressing, getting things ready, getting children gear on, gear off. And this one feels a little less maybe risky in terms of the outcomes of the possibility of injury. Although fingers can get pinched in zippers and hair can get stuck, and that can be tricky. However, getting dressed usually is pretty safe. But if we think about how often do we actually get children dressed or undressed? Hi, Lisa, welcome.
My dog feels much better.
My dog says thank you.
Her dog feels much better now.
My dog is no longer screaming.
Well, we were talking about training wheels, and now we moved on to getting children dressed for the outdoors.
Oh, that takes an hour.
It does. And here's kind of the parallel that I'm making, is that the idea of when you have one child, you might be able to sit there and let them really work their zipper and try to figure out the mechanics and get the skills built. But when you have 18 of them and you've only got, 20 minutes of playground time before you got to come in and do the next thing, you're just going to zip all the jackets and you're going to.
But that's Ross. This is why I get on I'm such a fan of mixed ages platform, because if I had 3, 4, 5-year-olds in with that mix, a group full of 2-year-olds, and you've heard me say this before, they're of no use to each other.
Yes.
They're not.
They're not going to help each other get dressed.
And it's not because they're nasty. It's because they just can't.
Right.
And so we set up the environment, again, going back to everything is an environmental issue. We set ourselves up for some of the things that we whine about, and they're entirely our own fault.
Right.
I will turn it back to you, my friend Rob.
But I think that's exactly it. That in a multi-age classroom, if you were to step back and go, wait a minute, I've got 4 children who can get themselves dressed. Why don't they become the helpers? And in this case, there can be that mentoring piece. There can be that piece of easing your time. But then that doesn't mean that you just get to get the other 12 children dressed and go faster. It's, well, now I can spend that extra time with a child to go. And the analogy that I found is that's worked well is the idea of having the train, which is the zipper, the station, which is the place where the zipper stops and goes down and rests, and then the passengers, which are the peg side that you slide into the zipper. And for the groups that I've introduced that with, they've actually really liked it. And they're like, wait, I got to get my passengers in. I'm not ready. And they figure out how to get it in. And I help them to go, oh, your passengers aren't all the way at the back of the train. And that's what happens. They'll try to pull their zippers too quick. Well, so now I can have that extra minute or two with some of these children who are really practicing that skill rather than doing it for them. Because then you'll just see, can you do my zipper? Can you do my zipper? And they'll just wait for you to do it because they know eventually you're going to do it. And it's not a life skill that I haven't met an adult yet who's still like, can you do my zipper? Can you, you know?
We hope anyway.
Kind of like potty training, right? We've not really ever met.
Yeah. Eventually they're going to get this skill. But more importantly, that independence, that autonomy that comes when they can do it themselves and how good that really feels. And you can have a room of 3-year-olds who by the end of the winter are helping each other get dressed, are doing it themselves, who then feel really good about that. So I think there's that social emotional piece that really, this feels good to be able to do it, but now I'm actually learning the skill rather than just winging it or having somebody do it for me, going back to the training wheels. The training wheels are just keeping me up, but I'm not learning how to balance. So as soon as those training wheels come off, some grown-up or other big kid has to run and make sure I don't, when I start to tip over, they'll catch me until one day, 2 day, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's another week before that child actually figures out how to ride the bike. So again, giving children real experiences with real materials to do real work. And that's where real learning is going to happen.
And so I'm going back to, because that's another great example, right, of what we do that prevents children from actually learning a skill like having training wheels or not learning how to balance. So, I call that how adults interfere, right? We're interfering with that learning process. And so I want to go back to the physical aspect as well. So now we've got fine motor, we've got gross motor, right? Riding the bike and balancing. And now we've got fine motor with zippers and socks and boots, which are always so fun. I remember as a kindergarten teacher. So what else can parents or teachers do who might be listening to this Porch Play Chat, change their behavior so that their child, and I'll give you one example. I know.
Yes, Lisa, you have something to say?
Time. But I'll let Deb finish, but it's time. But go back, Deb.
Yes. So Reagan is one of my granddaughters. And Reagan is physically very active. And she's really quite good at it. And so when Reagan was smaller, and when we didn't have COVID and I was spending more time with her, we would take Reagan to the playground. And Reagan loves physical challenges, loves them. And I really, truly, Nana, my God, I had to take deep breaths because she'd be climbing up this static piece of equipment, but she'd be climbing up and there was a gap between the platform and the static piece of equipment. And my heart would pound but I would stand close so I could catch her if she fell, but I acted calm. But I saw other parents say, don't do that, you'll fall. And then the child, of
course fell.
But that's a very hard thing to let happen.
That's a hard thing to unlearn.
It is. And so how can parents support that? Lisa knows I have 4 kittens. That was our COVID experiment. We got 4 kittens. So we're the weird cat people.
As you do during a pandemic.
As we do during a pandemic. And they range from 1 year all the way to 3.5 months old, right? So we didn't get them all at once. So we've had them a little bit at a time. And the rough and tumble play, I always think of you and Mike, the rough and tumble play that they do is hysterical. And so as they were doing their rough and tumble play initially, Chris would look at me and say, should we stop them? And I'm like, no, they're just practicing wrestling and where their bodies are in space. And and he was like, are you sure we shouldn't stop? No, they're fine. They're fine as they're.
So, hold on. This is the conversation I have to jump in. Has he never, who stops a cat? Do you know what happens to your face or your hands if you stop a cat from doing anything?
So I just have to say in full disclosure, his first wife was very cautious about everything. Yes. Yes. So.
But I think it's a point that actually I think is helpful for this scenario, because I think it's a lot of us, and I'm going to say just generally, adults have that feeling of, I don't want children to get hurt. When children come to my school, I usually want to send them home in the same condition they came in, relatively, you know, with them the same amount of fingers and fingernails and things. However, a quick show of hands or call outs, and these are for the listeners as well. Who here's ever scraped an elbow?
Yeah, everybody
had a bruised forehead,
everybody
falling down. Exactly, everyone has. So there's that balancing act of, well, I don't want children to get severely injured, but to recognize that they'll never fall down, they'll never get scraped, they'll never have that happen. To me, that's where we are shifting that when we say, oh, we have to be as safe as possible. Safe as possible is pillows taped all over, bubble wrap. There's nothing in the classroom because chairs and pencils and scissors and paper cuts and everything is going to cause a hazard if we really want to boil it down. So let's be as safe as necessary. But I think that idea of that, it's kind of calling back to the conversation we had a couple months ago. It's how do you start to say yes? Mm-hmm. So if you are the person who at the playground is like, that's really high. Ooh, I'm worried that, you know, we went to the playground today. We went to go see a frozen waterfall that's just outside of the Minneapolis downtown. It's at Minnehaha Falls. It's great. It's beautiful. There's a playground there. We got to play a little bit. Well, there's a climber and it's cold and it's wet and mittens are now getting kind of wet and slick and boots are getting wet and slick. So there's the reality. There's a hazard here that if you fall from way up there on the top of this, you know, 12-foot climber, you could really get hurt. Mm-hmm. But check in with yourself. How do you feel? Are your boots, you know, teaching them how to have that check-in? Are your mittens sticking or are they slipping? Are your boots actually feeling stickier or are they slipping on these bars? How does that feel? So we have that check-in to go, okay, where am I at with this? Where is the child at with this? So I've got a lot of threads and I'm going to try to pull them all together so that I think that idea of if you are not comfortable being at the playground and watching this child climb across the top part, just be honest and say, you know, way up there, I'm worried if you fall, I can't catch you fast enough. Mm-hmm. So let's start down here. So there might be something like that. Or it might be checking in. Hey, I haven't seen you jump from the top stair. Let's try the third stair and see how far you go, because you'll realize very quickly, oh, yes, they saw the child in their classroom who's 2 years older and mm-hmm. goes to gymnastics and plays soccer and goes to swimming and does all of these other things. They have the body skills to jump from all 6 stairs down to the ground. Well, I want to do that too, but you're 3 and you don't do any of these other things. And I know that you're the one who still falls down just walking down the hallway. So let's start with what feels safe and then giving them that chance to, when they jump from 1 step, 2 steps, maybe they try the third and they're like, oh, that is actually a lot higher than I thought. Now that jump isn't going to be there. So that's one thread. Mm-hmm. Children are going to fall down. They're going to get scraped. Let's go back to baby time. Mm-hmm. We all had to learn to walk. How did we do that?
We fell a lot.
And the first time you fell, did your parents say, oh no, we better not do this anymore? They're not ready. They're falling down.
You know what, Ross? That's awesome.
It is.
I'm gonna steal that.
Please, you know, steal that. I'm working on the trademark, so there's just minor royalty fees to go with it. But it's something that I would use. You
already went to the Lisa Murphy Protect Your Idea seminar.
Yeah, I've got that one in the bank. No, but it was one that I used with my my lecture class on motor development with the college students. I said, look at this. Really think about this. When babies make that first step, there's not the we can't do it anymore. It's cheering, it's joyous, and the baby's reinforced with, hey, they like this. So to go back to what's needed, as you said, Lisa, time. Mm-hmm. Children need time to do these skills. They need practice. They need some coaching. They need some instruction, but they also need encouragement. So when the baby's getting that reinforcement, if you're doing it, well, it feels good to them. Their world's opening up. But wow, every time I take a step, the people that I love and care the most about are showering me with wonderful faces and tickles, and they're cheering for me. Well, that's a motivator to keep trying this. And
Ross, I think the part that I love about what you said is You don't say no, and it's all, getting to yes, right? But you gave them a prompt about, well, how about trying it from the third step or from the second step instead of from the sixth step, right? And let's see how that feels to you, so
Right.
that they have a check-in. And again,
Right.
they're learning self-regulation, that I
Mhm.
need to regulate based on how it feels for me,
Right.
not what you're afraid I'm going to do. But you're letting me do it. You've given me a prompt to have me think a little deeper about
Yep.
my decision. And I think that's, if only we could do that more with children, instead of saying no, saying, what if we tried it from blah, blah, blah.
So hold on. And this is when I wish it really was a podcast, because everybody,
Yeah.
or a visual, where I recently learned that you only see, when you watch this, who's talking. And I really wish that was different, because I always thought that you saw all of us. Anyway, here's my thing. Ross, you just blew my mind 10 seconds ago. Why are we okay with the falling down of the baby? Is it because, to some degree, as an adult, we know that that's a natural part of what has to happen for you to get to where I know you're going to go? Why do we not, as adults, apply that same belief system to play as the vehicle for the math and the science and the, come on,
all of it?
Talk me through this.
It's exactly that. And I think that's the parallels I try to help parents see, the young teachers, when I go to do trainings, to go, just, it's not
no
a big
different. It's no different.
But it's this weird hidden gem that we're like, oh, wait a minute. And I think it's just the conditioning we've had of what it's not what school is. This isn't what learning is. But when we boil it down, every one of us in the grown-up world have been babies. We've been toddlers. We've been preschoolers. We've been adolescents. We've all lived those experiences. And early on, we had to do it over and over and over and over. And so that idea, when the baby's taking the first step, we're cheering. But even before that, when they're learning to creep and crawl and roll over, we're not stopping them saying, oh my God, we can't they're going to be on the move and they're going to be rolling halfway to downtown by the end of the night. And we'll never see them again. We go, oh no, there's a lot of stairs in this house. Time to put the baby gates up. In those cases, we're gonna make the environment reflect success and safety for this child. So Lisa, to your point, why don't we do that in science and math and English and all of these other content areas that are so important, but then we strip it away to what's natural for children to do, and we make them do it in more of an adult way. But if they were doing it with play, well, now you're the child who's getting to walk around the house. You're the child who's on the bike that's a smaller frame with no pedals, and you're learning what their center of balance really is. And then we go to the store and we get you the bigger pedal bike. Because one, I know you know how to use it. And two, you're growing up and you're getting bigger. Now you're ready to use that. And the point that I made earlier, like I started on a bike that was too big. We often give children these things or these materials that they're really not ready for, or they're not ready to get to. That point about jumping off the stairs, I'm not going to lift you and carry you down those 6 flights to do that. If you can't do it, that shows me you're not ready yet. So, and the reason why you're not ready is because you're not big enough. You don't feel like you can land safely. I'm not sure you can land safely or you can clear these steps. So let's build the skills so you can work your way up. And that might be just getting the muscular strength. It might be getting the proprioceptive kind of my body in motion. This is how I actually land. Oh, I can actually, it might be skills like that. It might just be, I need to grow up and get bigger because that physical distance just isn't clearable by someone my size yet. Okay. So same with monkey bars at the playground. I'm not going to lift you up so you can get there. If I have to go more than an inch or two, a couple inches to get you to the bars, if I have to raise you a full foot, well, that tells me that you're probably not ready for that big drop. So what do we do? How do we get those skills? And then it's, oh, there's so many pieces, but I know we have lots of other things to talk about. So I want to.
Oh no, we have.
You were going to say something.
We always have thousands of things to talk about, and that honestly, I mean, I have like, my brain was firing responses and comments to everything you just said. But to the last point, which is why I love loose parts on playgrounds more than fixed equipment, because if I don't, I mean, my rule is that you're not allowed to lift kids at all. I don't care if it's this much. I don't care if it's this much. You are not allowed to do it. It's a false sense of ability and security. That's when they fall. That's when they break stuff. And then that's when we get told that play-based, progressive, child-centered learning is hazardous. So like, no.
Right.
And to that though, same point, and I love how you said it, if there's loose parts available, then the child is going to be like, oh, hold on a minute. If I get that milk crate and put that 2x4 on top of the milk crate, oh, wait, hold on. I need one more 2x4. Oh, look at me. I can reach it. But if I only have fixed equipment with 1, 2, 3 steps, you know, and then that you got to do to get it, it's because even to go back and unpack that, because that's a whole conversation. But to go back and unpack that, all those loose parts, I think adults are going to be, once they kind of buy into it, are more inclined to be like, oh yeah, okay, I see that. However, if you have fixed equipment and loose parts, now watch a child attempt to solve the same problem. So I've got this fixed equipment. I need this much room. I go get a 2x4. I put it on the steps. That's going to have an adult go like, whoa, more than probably a child creating something to get to the goal, which is really just Lisa Murphy interrupting you, reinforcing the importance of loose parts.
Well,
and hold on.
One more thing. And
my turn.
And Lisa and I have been like, it's my turn. And what you were doing was the perfect example of scaffolding.
100%.
100%
the environment
scaffolding.
can do the scaffolding. It's not always a person. The stuff in the space can serve as the scaffold.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Well, and there is your preschool STEM program. Not buying the kit.
Yeah.
You've got it there happening in front of you. It's the real problem solving, but then it's real to the children. And that's what's more important. I want to get to that point. I want to do this thing. So, well, now you have the motivation. And then you say, I can't do this by myself. Hey, classmate, come help me. Well, now we have the social piece and now we're problem solving together. And we know that problem solving and only increases when more minds are put together. And then they go, oh, wait, it keeps falling down. I'll lay on top of it. And then you stand on top of that piece and it won't tip over. Well, now we have this cooperative problem solving. There's so many pieces and so much other developmental domain support happening when you have those open-ended pieces. And again, it's not me having to tell you and give you the answer, because that's going back to the kid who just says, hey, do my zipper. Well, now they're like, no, Ross, get out of the way. We need to fix this because it's not they don't need my idea. They want to do their idea. Well, who's the learning for? It's for children. It's for them who are in this doing the work. I've already learned some of these pieces. However, they teach me all kinds of new ways to figure out things all the time. But I think that's another part to go back to that piece, Deb, that you brought up was, what do children need? Well, they need time. And I think, or how do we help adults figure out these situations, is to remember that they're learning these things for the first time. And that the first time might be once, their first time might be 42 times until they finally get that reinforcement and go, now I got it. Well,
and so it goes back to what Lisa was talking about. It's time.
Always time.
It's observation, right? When, as a teacher, when might I need to ask a question?
But who are you asking that question for, right?
Yes,
and if and this is a whole other conversation, but if as a teacher, as a provider, a caregiver, if I'm thinking that the schedule is more important than the facilitation of these experiences. So time, the idea of time has a lot of spokes that each of those spokes are worthy of their own porch play chat. Philosophical time, metaphorical time, you know, like literal time. But if I feel that I have to stay on some kind of schedule that's stapled to the wall, I'm going to be less inclined to provide an open-ended sense of time for a child who is learning to how to put on their zipper. If I feel that, by golly, I have to be outside right now because we have to come inside and have a snack, I'm going to be less inclined to allow the children to figure out how to assist scaffolding each other, perhaps,
Right.
of putting on, of doing the zippers.
Well,
Right.
and I think those lessons for teachers are so important. It helps them understand and reflect on, is this something I need to get involved with? Because I mean, I have truly been on playgrounds, Ross, where the teachers would sweep the gravel off the path, right? Over. They spent their entire time outside sweeping the gravel off the path because they didn't want children to fall. And I said, are you going to be around every park where there's gravel sweeping for them? Well, no. Well, then they need to learn what to do when there's gravel on the sidewalk.
Which is different than pushing them off of the bike, somehow replicating what you think in your, you know, crazy brain, what would happen if they over the gravel, right? We need resilient children. Okay, what does that mean? It means that they know how to get up after they have fallen down, metaphorically, which doesn't mean we push them. It's not resiliency day, right?
Right.
And I think that is a piece that gets often overlooked in this conversation. We're not putting kids in harm's way. We're not overly exaggeratingly protecting them from life events, nor are we manufacturing and fabricating events to get them used to these events. We're dealing with events as they happen in the moment.
Organically
events. In the moment.
As we all experience, because we've all lived life. We've all fallen down on gravel, and it doesn't matter if it was swept or not. It's going to happen. Something very exciting just happened. Lisa, you got to share. What happened?
The eagle got a cat.
Oh no.
That's real life. That's real life. That, you know what? Sometimes it's going to happen in front of you.
I'm never going to come visit you with my kittens.
Oh yeah, I know. That's why I was like, no, there's eagles up there, and the baby, they're hungry.
Well, but they got to learn. They're doing real work, and because at some point you got to learn to catch them.
They're adding to the nest. Everybody's got to eat. Oh, it's one of those tragically fantastic experiences.
Yeah,
to watch
Planet Earth right here in your backyard.
Right. Where's Richard Attenborough? Why is he not narrating that?
Right. Well, there's the one other point that I wanted to just interject that was related again, like to the self-regulation, or that idea of going back to like the stair jumping, where the child's going to figure out where they're at. You know, this is that self-check-in that they go, oh, where am I at? What do I really need to do? So that way, when they're in the middle school or high school classroom and they're getting that question like, hey, you want to go do this scandalous thing or this thing that's maybe against the rules, and they can go in and be like, not that they're going to go back. I remember in preschool when I had to assess whether or not I wanted to jump from the third step.
How to do a risk-benefit analysis,
you know, but they go, but they're not going to do it to the conscious level, but they're going to go, oh, I've had experiences. I've had times where I had to check in and go, does this feel safe to me? Does this feel like a good idea? And they go, no, or they go, yes. And then they know that, well, sometimes when I jump off the stair, I might fall down and get bumped and it might hurt. Sometimes I might land. That might feel okay. So then when they're getting older, well, now this idea of how do you assess your own kind of choices in life? And you can kind of have the forethought to go, what's going to be the possible outcomes here? And am I really going to like that? Is it going to be worth the risk? Is it really something that could only end with probably some level of trouble or whatever it is? But I think it's those opportunities in childhood, these early years that we're building up for later on in life. So a spelling test, learning the words, how to spell parole or bail bond or anything like that, is not going to keep you out of jail.
Right.
But having somebody to go on the playground with and say, you know what, that feels a little too risky to me. I don't want to do that. Or, hey, if we push them down, we're going to get in trouble. And that doesn't feel good to get in trouble. And it's not going to feel good to hurt a classmate or a friend of mine. So it's that idea of like, how does play not translate? Well, it's these early experiences that also thus carry to adulthood. And you go, oh, that's where you have more maybe high functioning or well balanced adults that we sometimes struggle to see in the adult world at times. You know,
well, and it's because they've had practice, right? They have to practice it, to learn it, to master it. And if we wrap them in bubble wrap, they don't have the practice.
Right.
Ross, this has been amazing as always. I'm gonna do the final little spiel. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. To learn more about Porch Play Chats, make sure to visit our website at ipausa.org. Thanks for listening and keep on playing.
Bye, everybody.